Thank you. It is, of course, a challenge to speak after a number of distinguished speakers and still be able to add something to the discussion. And I hope you will forgive me that the good international civil servant that I am, I will look for safety in a prepared speech. Much of the debate about Afghanistan focuses on how to stop conflict, how to save lives, and how to promote democratic governance for obvious reasons. And as you know, the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, UNAMA, is coordinating the security and recovery efforts with some 1,500 staff and more than 35 agencies working alongside the government of Afghanistan. This is just to prove Sir Malcolm's point about this being a United Nations effort. And I, as was mentioned by Mark, actually had the opportunity and the privilege to sit on behalf of my country in the Security Council when these decisions were taken. However, I will try to highlight some issues related to the economic transformation that needs to occur in order to help break the conflict and poverty cycle. The Afghanistan National Development Strategy addresses this link as it aims to boost private sector activity and to establish a business-enabling environment. I will discuss some of these ways that UNCTAD and other members of the international community, along with donors and the private sector, can help support. Some progress has already been made. I think it has to be said. There are signs of an economic reawakening in Afghanistan after decades of conflict and economic isolation. The economy has been growing at a very high rate, in fact, averaging some 16% per annum, albeit from a very low base. GDP has risen, and thanks to a revival of agriculture with exports of wheat, corn, barley, rice, and wool products, including carpets, and growth in the services sector, especially construction. Substantial financial support from the international community for reconstruction has boosted national income, and sound macroeconomic policies have also helped. However, significant obstacles remain, not only because of the devastation wrought directly by the conflict, but also because of indirect effects, including the fact that the private sector has been virtually absent for decades. Afghanistan is a very vulnerable economy with average national income of only $415 per capita, and it shares all of the challenges facing other landlocked, least developed countries. The World Bank's Human Development Indicator ranks Afghanistan at number 181 out of 182, just above Niger. UNCTAD has identified a number of areas where it and members of the international community can contribute to developing the private sector, helping to reduce poverty and to boost economic growth. This is informed by our experience over nearly 50 years as the United Nations focal point for the integrated treatment of trade and development at the interrelated areas of finance, investment, and technology. One of the first steps that is needed is to boost investment. Domestic investment will be needed, both private and public, but it is clear that foreign investment could play an important role at this stage, given the limited availability of local resources. By establishing businesses locally, foreign investment can create jobs and bring international knowledge and skills and open access to global markets. Of course, none of this is automatic. Foreign firms will not invest abroad without considering all the angles, and similarly, host countries would wish to ensure that the inward investment generates maximum benefits. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development has worked on investment policy reviews in post-conflict settings such as Cambodia, Rwanda, and Sierra Leone, among other places. And our research has shown that governments need to do more than just put in place a transparent and efficient legal and regulatory framework, which is already a big challenge. We also work with governments to help local enterprises create beneficial linkages with the foreign investors through small and medium enterprise policies that encourage the transfer of knowledge and skills. This helps promote local income-generating opportunities that might not happen otherwise, ensuring that growth is broad-based and sustainable as benefits are shared throughout the economy. In our work in Sri Lanka, for example, we also recommended the government to encourage the return of its sizable diaspora population, who can bring back much needed skills and knowledge as well as their investment capital. They're also more likely to invest than transnational corporations in unstable settings such as in Afghanistan. One of the goals of investments is, of course, to boost trade. As I have indicated, Afghanistan's trade is still mostly in the commodity sectors, and it will be important to encourage a broader base of tradable products and services that is less vulnerable to the volatilities of global commodity markets. In this regard, I know that interregional trade is extremely low, and yet in many other parts of the world, this has been identified as a major contributor to growth. UNCTAD research indicates that the very low levels of interregional trade in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, has been a limiting factor to development in that region, compared to Southeast Asia, where interregional trade is more than 50% of total trade, and you can see what's happening there. Local trading partners can be important sources of relevant technologies and skills, helping to build competitiveness. They can be significant markets in their own rights, as well as being a stepping stone to the global markets. Regional cooperation with the construction of major infrastructure projects would also help, given the number of landlocked countries in the region and the limited funds available domestically in most of them. Afghanistan recently became the 8th member of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. And UNCTAD research and analysis on South-South trade, investment, and other forms of regional collaboration indicates that such integration initiatives could play and should play a much more significant role. We have also been working directly with the Afghan authorities since 2004, assisting the country's accession towards the World Trade Organization. We have helped prepare its trade regime and begun training trade negotiators and policy officials. Afghanistan currently has observer status at the World Trade Organization, but it's entering the final stage of accession, and if all goes well, it should become a full-fledged member in a few years' time. Membership is important because for an LDC, or at least developed country like Afghanistan, it grants privileges as duty-free, quota-free access to other WTO member state markets, and it can also encourage foreign direct investment by guaranteeing national treatment to foreign firms. Transborder trade and security are, of course, very interlinked. The conflict fueling role of trafficking of weapons, drugs, or money is well understood, and less frequently mentioned is the revenue-raising role of legitimate trade operating through government collection of customs and excises. Even when global tariff levels are falling, this can still be vital in the context where the informal economy is large and the formal economy is small, and so there are few ways for governments to collect tax. In Afghanistan, domestic tax revenue is at the lowest levels in the world. So I was encouraged to see a lead article on the UNAMA webpage this week describing how customs houses in eastern Afghanistan are making extraordinary progress in collecting revenues thanks to UNCTAD's automated system of custom data, something we call ASICUDA for short. The Afghanistan-Pakistan border post described in this article was established in January 2006. It has been extremely effective, even though this is only one checkpoint along a 6,000-kilometer-long border. UNCTAD has worked with Afghan customs for more than 5 years now, and we have implemented 6 border custom stations in addition to custom posts and cities internally, inside the country. Before we introduced this computerized system, there was massive underreporting of trade, with as few as 1 out of 6 vehicle crossings being reported. Now revenue collection has risen 4- to 5-fold, and to the extent that the government collects around 50% of its total domestic revenue through customs payments. Another advantage of the computerized system is that it has significantly speeded up the customs process. In the past, it could take 2 to 3 days for a goods-laden truck in Pakistan to get approval to enter Afghanistan, as all the requested letters and approvals had to be hand-delivered. Such transport delays significantly raise the cost of trade and discourage business. Now transactions can be completed in 15 minutes, helping both countries benefit from more trade. There are also spillover benefits to landlocked neighbors who enter Afghanistan in transit en route to port. Another point I'd like to make is about debt management. A country in a conflict or post-conflict situation can easily find itself trapped with heavy debt burdens, leaving it insolvent and unable to pay for even the most basic reconstruction, let alone to afford the skills upgrading, technology, or structural adjustment packages that are recommended in some countries following the current global economic crisis. Afghanistan's total level of debt is still uncertain, as data is lacking. However, some reports have put it at more than $3 billion. This may not sound excessive in absolute terms, but in relative terms it is high, given that Afghanistan still lacks the fiscal structures, export capacity, and capital markets with which to make the repayments. Even debt administration can be difficult because documentation is destroyed or staff lack adequate training. UNCTAD has developed expertise in this very technical area over the last 25 years through its debt management and financial assistance program. In Iraq, we have worked directly with the Ministry of Finance and the Central Bank and helped put in place the transparent and reliable debt management systems that enable them to secure more viable terms with the Paris Club of Donors. In Haiti, which shares with Afghanistan the need for economic transformation, UNCTAD recommended an immediate moratorium on all multilateral debts to be followed as soon as possible by its cancellation. Afghanistan has benefited from significant debt relief in recent years, but debt remains a major challenge, and it will remain in high risk of debt distress and will need external assistance for a number of years to come. The official development assistance is another point. Taking a step back from Afghanistan in particular, there are important parallels in what I have been describing with the general debate about the role and impact of official development assistance in developing countries. That research has shown that in most developing countries, assistance has become increasingly directed to critical social or humanitarian needs, and thus, unfortunately, away from investment in productive capacities and job-creating activities that are essential to long-term sustainable development. We are concerned that this trend undermines donors' efforts to help countries reach the Millennium Development Goals by the 2015 deadline. We all agreed on these goals. And to illustrate these concerns, we use the metaphor of running in two legs, meaning that achieving the Millennium Development Goals required linking policies for productive capacities and employment creation with policies for social sector development. If we focus only on social or humanitarian sectors, we would be like trying to reach the finish line on one single leg. In the Afghanistan context, the wider point remains an economic perspective is badly needed. And to conclude, I have highlighted a few examples of areas where UNCTAD and other development partners can contribute to the economic transformation efforts of the government of Afghanistan to complement the security and political initiatives that are underway. All of these examples are ways of boosting Afghanistan's productive capacities, meaning the ability of the Afghan economy to produce and trade a more diversified range of goods and services of higher value added. Through this, Afghanistan can support employment generation and economic growth. As I have indicated, there are many areas in this regard where the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development and other development partners have a positive role to play. Afghanistan is a country in distress, but it is not the only one. The lessons that we learn in Afghanistan may be applied in other countries, and vice versa. The lessons learned in other countries can give insights to the Afghanistan context. There is no single rule book on how to tackle these issues, because every country and every conflict is different. However, there will be common threads that can be identified, including the role of investment, fiscal and monetary policy, skills transfer, trade, and above all, the creation of jobs and opportunities to earn income. Bringing all of these interdependent elements together is essential in today's interdependent world. To sum up, it is UNCTAD's view that the long-term peace and security of Afghanistan, and perhaps also the region, will depend not only on saving lives, but also on securing livelihoods. When we save livelihoods in Afghanistan, we will also be saving future lives, the lives of the Afghani people, and also the lives of the international peacekeepers and the development community who are working to help support peace and reconstruction. Thank you.